Because I was scared that I wouldn't have the right commitment, that it would be like, because it's permanent, it's great. I'm still like shocked after 18 years of working in tattoo shops and almost 14 of tattooing. I'm still like, how do you let me do this to you, you know?
That was tattooer Taylor Nicols. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Every week on this podcast, you'll hear from tattoo artists, volunteers, artists, and San Franciscans from all walks of life, telling stories, sharing personal histories, and trying to put into words what makes this city so special. Welcome to episode 42, part 2. In part 1, Taylor told us all about growing up in North Beach, where her dad would frequently take her to neighborhood bars and restaurants. In this episode, Taylor rattles off some of the SF spots she used to go to that aren't around anymore. She shares the story of how she got started tattooing and later helping to open Let It Bleed in the Tenderloin. She ends the podcast reflecting on the changes in San Francisco over the last decade and some trends she's seeing now that offer some hope. Here's Taylor. Can I get you, before we get into the tattooing stuff, just kind of rattle off bars and restaurants, whether they're still around or not, like that you hung out, especially as you left North Beach, like.
Okay. So, Hockey Haven in the outer Richmond is one of my favorites. It is a very locals. It's a sports bar, but it's also kind of an Irish bar. Hockey Haven's great. I hung out there when I lived out there because it was the only choice, but I love it. 540 Club on Clement was definitely somewhere that everyone hung out at all the time, and now it's kind of like a ghost bar, but it's awesome. I always hang out in places where the people that own them are either friends of friends or they're working, or so they're part of it. Pops was the one. Treat Street I went to before I was old enough to go there. The Mission was always somewhere that I went to get out of whatever neighborhood I lived in, and then I lived in it and I absolutely adored it. It's definitely a little bit different now, but yeah, Parkside. God, I love Parkside. I'll just go there to like have their food is so good. But where did I hang out? Yeah, Treat Street, Pops. Those
what about
were kind
like
of the ones.
Restaurants and venues?
Oh God. I guess Parkside. Yeah, Great American always. But it's a lot of the like small like Hemlock. The whole building just got ripped down. That was one of the last, in my opinion, like. Truly, like a band could come from wherever and not have a big draw and still get a couple people in there. Like it was in the back of the bar, but the shows are still like $5 to $8, you know, unless it was something really big, which was rare for there. And it was still affordable. Oh my God, Covered Wagon was so amazing, and then that became Annie's Social Club, and I have no idea what it is now, if it even is anything.
I don't know either.
Paradise had stuff. I always went to the Cocodrie when I was younger because it was all ages. Because I went to a lot of shows when I was younger, and there were still some all ages venues here, and I mean, that like I don't know. I mean, Bottom of the Hill, they have all ages shows on like Sundays or something. Bottom of the Hill's always been a good one, but yeah, I mean, I can't even like. A lot of them have been gone for so long. I can't even like. How did I almost forget the Covered Wagon? Weird.
Because there used to be a lot.
Oh, and the one, oh my God, what was the one that was on? I was actually just talking about this with somebody. It was across the street from Slim's. And it was awesome. And there's like 3 spaces all in one. So you would find out like which one it was at.
Down from Paradise then? Or
across the street. And then there was Palazzo. Oh man, Palazzo was so cool. Palazzo was on Mission, and it was such a cool, weird space, and I don't know how people got it. But it was upstairs, and they did art shows, and it was almost like going like a house punk show. That Palazzo was really cool.
Is that the one that became 12 Galaxies?
No. Well, I think originally Palazzo was upstairs, and it was past 24th, right around there. Okay. And then I think they moved it down to something that then became 12 Galaxies.
Okay.
because there was a couple things there.
Yeah.
Mission Records.
Yes.
Mission Records. I passed out at a show at Mission Records because it was so packed that I fainted because I couldn't get out.
Nothing to do with alcohol, just like
no, I don't even think I drank. I came
lack of-
straight from work.
Yeah.
It was this band called Thorns of Life. And it's a weird thing because like Jawbreaker was such a big 90s. I mean, they were Oakland, but also San Francisco. All their liner notes and stuff were pictures of the city and the Mission. And so they had one of the guys in that band and the drummer of another really cool band formed something, and they were here playing, and they played all these secret shows, and so many people were just like packing in, and it was really cool for me because it was like, oh, it's like when I was a kid, but at the same time I was like 25 and passing out, 26 or whatever, you know. And then they got back together, so it's like a weird. That's what I mean. I feel like things are coming back around.
They got back together, and Tuffy did their poster for the latest show at the Fillmore that I was so happy to be at.
I was on some post of theirs because I have like 6 Jawbreaker tattoos.
Oh. We'll have to get pictures of those, yeah?
And they took a bunch.
Yeah.
Adam has a bunch of pictures of them. Adam from the band, yeah.
I think earlier you said by the time you were like 18 or so, like you knew you wanted to be a tattoo
No,
artist.
I didn't know until I was maybe like 20, 21, I think.
Okay.
But I worked in a tattoo shop.
Oh.
Yeah, when I was 18. I knew I wanted tattoos.
Right.
So when I was a little kid, growing up in North Beach, there was Goldfields and there was Lyle Tuttle's. And Goldfields was it was around the corner from Tomaso's. So I was allowed to go to the arcade, and I would cross the street, which I wasn't supposed to do, and sneak in there. And so I grew up with just like, that was my little secret, is I would run into Goldfields and like the flash. I knew I wanted to have tattoos. Like little girls are always like, oh, I imagine my wedding when I get, like, when I would picture myself older doing any of the things that I pictured, I was tattooed, like heavily tattooed. And I figured out that if I started getting a couple of tattoos, and the guy that owned the tattoo shop went to SFAI, which is where I went to college, and he was like, oh, you need a job? And I think he was trying to hire my younger, cuter friend. But I was like, I need a job. She has a trust fund. She doesn't need one. I need a job. Because I got free tattoos.
Oh.
So I worked there for almost zero money.
Is that where you got your first tattoo then?
So I have a couple like one or two nonsense things on my legs from when I was like a little crusty punk kid.
We all do.
Yeah, right. But real tattoo, I got my first one at Mom's on Haight Street, which I later worked at for almost 10 years. Because my high school boyfriend had a bunch of tattoos, and I was very cool for dating a 16-year-old with tattoos. And he had gotten them with a fake ID at Mom's. So it was the only shop I knew. I was 18 when I went, but it was the only shop I knew. So I went there, and I wound up working there forever. Wow. But when I would have downtime, when I started working the counter more, I would read the books, because there's tons of books. And most of it is reference, like photo reference, which was great too. But a lot of it was like historical. And I just fell head over heels in love with the history of tattooing, because it was a lot like the history of punk music or the history of beat poetry. Like all these things that I loved that shaped who I am, tattooing was just as cool, if not, it had the same kind of origin story, you know? So I fell in love with it. And he actually asked me if I wanted to apprentice. He was, I mean, I'll always be thankful for the opportunity, but he was I think he just wanted to have some girl to drag around conventions and be like, look at my apprentice, which he did later. And I wanted to be a painter. I was going to be an oil painter. I was going to move to New York, and I was going to be in galleries, and I was going to paint. And so I said no. And because also I didn't really like the whole vibe kind of it. I wanted to be taken seriously. And he got an apprentice, and I watched that guy royally screw it up. And I was like, and I also was scared of it, because tattooing is like, it's a 2-year, like at least where I worked in a lot of places, it's a 2-year formal apprenticeship. This is before people saw TV and decided to start tattooing. Like this is when you actually had to like know someone and beg for an apprenticeship, and It was hard work. And I'm not saying it isn't now. A lot of people still do it right. A lot of people don't. I was lucky for the opportunity. And once I saw someone screw it up, I was like, oh no, I've got this in the bag. Because I was scared that I wouldn't have the right commitment, that it would be like, because it's permanent. It's great. I'm still like shocked after 18 years of working in tattoo shops and almost 14 of tattooing. I'm still like, how do you let me do this to you? Right, you know, right. It's a big deal. So
yeah, there's no erasers on the.
No, and so when I started, I said yes, please, yes. And I was very lucky that I had a boyfriend at the time, because I dropped out of school, that really was starting a business, had the money, but no time. And I had time, but no money. So he paid the rent and the bills. And I worked for free at the tattoo shop. I got tips sometimes. I would pay for our groceries. And he worked like 20 hours a day a lot of the time. So I did all the cleaning and the cooking and like took care of everything while I was learning to tattoo. And it's because of him. There are some people that get paid apprenticeships. Mine was not like that. And a lot of times people will pay for them. Like I pay $5,000 and you teach me to tattoo. That happens a lot. I didn't have to pay. I paid in labor.
Right.
So it worked out. It was actually and then I was guaranteed. I worked for free for 2 years. I did a 2-year formal, and then I promised to work there for 2 years.
Okay. So you did your formal apprenticeship at Mom's.
Yes, on Haight. Yeah, it's
Okay.
still there. The guy who was the main owner, there was a co-owner, wound up selling to the co-owner, so he owns it all now.
Okay.
So I worked there for almost 10 years, and then one of the guys who had worked there before me, who worked there forever, he decided to open his own tattoo shop, and I went with him. So it was the two of us for almost 6 months at Let It Bleed, which is on Polk. And then another guy that we worked with came over.
So you're a part owner, or?
No.
Oh.
Eric owns it. I just went with him. We just did it. I mean, it was the two of us. I helped like build it and do all that fun stuff. So.
What made you want to do that?
I hated where I worked.
Okay.
I absolutely hated it. I made a lot of money, which was great for being so young in it, because it was very touristy. You take the bus to Haight Street, the door opens, and it literally opens into the shop.
Right.
But the guy who was the owner, the guy who apprenticed me, didn't really teach me anything. He taught me a lot of what not to do, honestly. And again, I'm thankful for it, but like the opportunity, but like, it was really hard working for him, and it was a coup, basically. Like, Eric left, I left. Danny just needed to make sure that he had enough clients to leave. He left. A bunch of other people. It was just, he had fostered a really crappy environment, and we all knew we were better than that, you know?
Right.
So we left. It was one of that was my family, though, so I was really lucky that my family, I got to go with them.
Nice.
So, and our shop now, it's been 10 years.
I was going to ask.
So 2009, we opened the day after Easter. I'll never forget that, in 2009. I figured out the actual date. I can't remember it now. It was like April 8th, I think. It always changes.
Easter's a different day every year.
I'm pretty sure it was April. It was April 8th, I think, or maybe our party was April 8th, but I'm pretty sure that was the day.
So you just hit 10 years this year, just this April.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Congratulations.
We had a party at Boozeland.
Yeah, you guys are down on Polk?
Yeah, we're on Polk between Post and Sutter. So we were
Oh.
across the street from the Hemlock, which is no longer, we are, but it's not there anymore. So,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
How, do you want to speak to that neighborhood or that experience?
Yeah, I actually,
of running
Tenderloin to me is also, it's not as unchanged as other neighborhoods, just because there are gin bars and things like that. But it's really cool that it's as sketchy as it is, because so many people keep getting shoved closer together when they can't afford stuff or have mental illness or whatever it is. That's where all the resources are. So it gets a bad rap, but it's really because the city has created it that way. They've been doing that, making the Tenderloin what it is since the 30s. So it's like, it is what it is. But at the same time, it is locals. People come together. People live in the neighborhood and work in the neighborhood. And new things have opened. How long? Boozeland, I don't know how long it's been open. Less than we have. 7 years? Yeah, that sounds about right. And well, you would know, but I remember it opening after us a couple years and me being like, oh my God, there's something new that's like cool, because it's people that own other bars that are cool, Mm-hmm. So it was like going there and like, oh my God, there's a new spot for us to go. Like Hemlock, was torn down. There's like not a couple. It's still, people look out. Like, you walk down the street and people are like, oh, hi, how are you? And us being in the neighborhood, it's like, we tattoo people in the neighborhood. So you see,
Nice.
We get tourists. It's great. But it's also like, it feels like, a coffee shop vibe. Like, everyone kind of, like, not everyone. There's some, new things that are kind of like, why is that there? But it's struggling a little, I think, honestly, because all the retail is just a lot of it's sitting empty. Because no one can open a small business.
I was going to say that's happening all over. I'm seeing it all over.
It's gnarly. Yeah, it's all over. Yeah. And I think Polk just has so much retail, too, so I notice it. But there's a spot next to us that's been sitting empty for God knows how long. And it's kind of like, man, if only they would make stuff a little bit more reasonable and people could actually like use those spaces, but they're sitting empty because the landlords are getting the tax breaks. So it's kind of a, you know, that neighborhood's, it's great, but I feel like it gets stifled a little bit from all the stuff.
I think that's a good setup for maybe what we'll end on, and that is your thoughts on just this time period that we're talking about, like the last 10 years, and what we do about it, or looking forward. Like, what do you think?
I think that I think a lot of stuff that I viewed as negative, and a lot of other people did too, is kind of subsiding right now. There's not as much of a push, it feels like, for new fancy restaurants that aren't local. You know, there isn't as much of a push of like tearing things down and build. They've done it. They did it. The last 10 years was just like, oh my God, it was like this city was just getting sucked dry, you know, and people were getting kicked out and all the Ellis, like, it's just the last 10 years, I feel like, the last 20, you know, like we had a break for a minute, but it's just, the city's always changing. My dad said that to me when I was younger. He was like, it was the hippies, then it was the yuppies, then it was, you know, the tech. It's like, it's always, every generation has some. San Francisco, like, people want to be here. And it sucks that the last group, in my opinion, weren't bringing a lot culturally to the table, artistically, creatively, and that's a bummer. But,
and also not recognizing that
and not
history,
treating
legacy
what we have well.
Of art and culture.
Yeah, I'll never forget the kid in the Mission that like wanted to play baseball, and there's the tech guys that weren't even using it, and they're like, no, but we reserved it, so you can't be here. And it's like, dude, you guys, they weren't even playing. They were sitting there drinking beer, and they kicked a little kid whose family, like, his family did not have a computer, so he couldn't reserve it.
Right.
It's that for me was the day I left. I left a couple years later. I was kind of sick to my stomach over the way a lot of transplants treated the city, and it hurt my feelings.
Google buses.
Yeah,
and all that
it hurt
shit,
my feelings because I was like, man, like I mean, as a whole, you know, it was like, look what you're doing to everybody, you know, and it's like, and I moved from one neighborhood to another, you know, and like I supported the businesses there, and that's what I think needs to happen now. Is it's like, it was Thursday Art Walk, like first Thursday last month, and I walked down Polk Street or down Larkin, and there were 3 art openings in 3 blocks. And they were all super cool, and they were in locally owned businesses, and they were local artists, and it was just so, and I was like, oh, people are out, you know, and it's like, there are more people that could come to these things, more people need to support it, because people are, I'm not going to say we're like fighting for the city, but I mean, I guess we are, you know, there's a lot of people that are like doing their best, like you guys making a podcast, or like the girl who owns Fleetwood on Larkin, which is a great store, filling her store, Nico, filling her store. She has a printing press that makes the money so she can have the store so that she can showcase local artists and craftsmen. And it's like, if we keep doing that, like pushing that, we're going to fill in the holes that we lost culturally, you know?
That was Taylor Nicols. Join us next week when we'll hear from life coach Bowen Dwelly. Music for the podcast is by Otis McDonald. Film photography is by Michelle Kilfeather. You can find all of our episodes over on our website, storiedsf.com. While you're there, please support what we do by going to our store page and choosing from several different pledge levels. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We're now on YouTube, so please subscribe to the show there as well. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, do us a favor and rate and review the show, please. And if you have any feedback or potential guests for us, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.